Well, I think this is going to be so great. We had some time talking about it over lunch and discussing what an interesting book this is. Among all the books in the Bible, to really focus on this book, I think it takes a certain kind of person to spend as much time as you have studying it. But I thought it might be fun if we started today by just covering some of the stories or some of the searches that get done on the internet about the book of Revelation. I mean, if you put in what is the book of Revelation, it's just, hundreds, thousands of questions related to that book. And some of them are really, true questions, real questions. But there's also many wacky questions as well. And I think, Dave, you've probably heard them all. So let's start with some of the wacky questions just for the fun part of it, beginning with a question about aliens. Is this book hinting at an alien invasion? I mean, a lot of people believe that the strange creatures in Revelation might be evidence of some extraterrestrial life. What is your take on this idea, and why do you think people would interpret it that way?
Yeah, I mean, the difficulty is to answer that question, we have to understand, and maybe later on we'll go into a little bit more detail of what kind of book this is, because what we think Revelation is, what kind of book we think it is, will influence the way we read it and what we expect to find in it. And so many people treat this as, number one, it's a prophecy, and yes, it is. But we think of prophecy in our day and age as this is a prediction of future events way off in the distance, and then the other thing is these images that we see in Revelation of strange creatures or locusts that have tails like scorpions and heads like human beings and teeth like a lion, etc. This strange combination. Then we often take that as we want to read that rather literally. Well, John must have been seeing some strange mythological or he must have been seeing a extraterrestrial creature or something like that. And what we need to realize is number one, John is writing in a kind of literature that communicates through images and symbols or metaphor. So if anyone's familiar with, you read or read things that are written in metaphor, picturesque kind of language, that's what Revelation does. And John's using images that his readers would have been very familiar with, so they would have known what they were hearing or seeing or listening to when they heard Revelation read to them, which chapter 1 verse 3 tells us that's how the first readers would have heard it. And they would have understood these images and kind of what they meant and what they referred to. They would have been familiar, whereas 2,000 years later we read it and we automatically jump to our own setting and our own way of thinking, and this must be referring to aliens or extraterrestrial creatures or something like that. And I'm not sure the first readers would have ever understood it or taken it that way.
So they had a knowledge or insight that we don't have today because John was writing it for that audience.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I mean, the book begins and ends with indications that John expected his readers to understand. He assumed they were going to understand what it was he saw in his vision and what he was writing. In chapter 1, verse 3, it says, "Blessed is the one who reads the words of this prophecy, the whole book, and blessed are those who hear it and keep it." So my question is, how could John expect his readers to keep, which means to obey, a book if they had no idea if this was about 21st century aliens and things they had no idea it was about? I mean, to me, that makes John and ultimately God deceptive, that he would tell his readers, you have to obey this book, but you have no idea what it's about.
Yeah, it feels like, what would be the point of that? How would they connect? How could they connect with something that supposedly is happening 2,000 years later?
Right. And then the
I
book,
just can't see how they would do it.
and then Revelation ends. John is told at the very end in chapter 22, verse 10, by an angel, don't seal up the words of this prophecy because the time is at hand. To seal up a book was to hide its content for a later date, and John's told not to. So that means this is not for some later generation. This is a message for his readers, his first century readers right now, that they can understand, and they should be able to obey and put into practice.